December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns beneath a rising sun. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto stands aboard the battleship Nagato, watching reconnaissance photographs develop in the dim light of the war room. The images show American battleships twisted like broken toys, their hulls split open, fuel oil spreading across Hawaiian waters like blood in snow. His officers celebrate around him, sake cups raised, voices echoing through steel corridors. Yamamoto's face remains stone. He turns from the photographs and speaks words that will haunt Japan for generations. I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with terrible resolve. The room falls silent. Outside, beyond the ship's hull, the Imperial Japanese Army has already begun movements that will test whether precision alone can defeat industrial fury. The Japanese military machine in 1941 represents 2 decades of calculated evolution. Following the Great War, Japan's officers studied European tactics with obsessive attention, dissecting every battle, every maneuver, every failure. They traveled to Germany, to France, observing how armies moved, how campaigns unfolded, how nations fell. The lessons returned home in leather journals and photographic plates, analyzed in war colleges where future generals memorized terrain maps like sacred texts. The invasion of Manchuria in 1931 served as their laboratory. Japanese forces moved with choreographed efficiency, rail lines seized within hours, communication centers neutralized before dawn. The world watched, fascinated and horrified, as a relatively small force subjugated a territory 4 times the size of Japan itself. Speed, coordination, overwhelming force at decisive points, these became doctrine. China's vastness nearly broke that doctrine. Japanese columns pushed inland, capturing cities, controlling coasts, yet victory remained elusive. The front stretched endlessly, supply lines thinned, soldiers fought in mountains and rice paddies far from home. Still, the army adapted. They learned to operate with minimal supplies, to coordinate complex movements across impossible distances, to maintain discipline when every rational instinct screamed retreat. Officers drilled their men with mechanical repetition. A rifle disassembled in darkness, reassembled blind. A company moving through jungle without sound. Artillery crews calculating trajectories in seconds, adjusting for wind and elevation with intuitive precision. Sleep deprivation, hunger, heat, cold, all considered variables to be overcome through training and will. The Navy and Army rarely spoke. Inter-service rivalry ran deeper than any foreign conflict. Admirals and generals competed for resources, for glory, for the emperor's favor. They planned separate wars, often learning of each other's operations only when troops collided in the field. Yet both services shared an unshakable belief that spiritual purity combined with technical excellence could overcome material disadvantage. American intelligence officers filed reports throughout the 1930s. Japanese forces, they noted, displayed remarkable discipline. Individual soldiers seemed capable of extraordinary endurance. But the assessments carried a dismissive tone. Japanese equipment appeared inferior, their industrial capacity limited, their strategic vision constrained by island geography. How could such a nation threaten the continental United States? The answer lay not in what Japan possessed, but in how completely they utilized it. Every soldier trained for multiple roles. Every unit practiced amphibious assaults until landing craft became extensions of their own bodies. Every officer memorized contingency plans for scenarios that seemed impossibly remote. Maps of the American West Coast covered walls in Tokyo planning rooms. Analysts studied San Francisco's defenses, Los Angeles's industrial zones, Seattle's harbors. They calculated tide tables, measured beach gradients, identified weak points in coastal fortifications that American commanders assumed impregnable. The invasion plans existed not as fantasy but as detailed operational blueprints, updated monthly, refined constantly. February 1942. Japanese submarines surface off the California coast. The I-17 rises from black water near Santa Barbara, deck gun crews scrambling into position. Shells arc toward the Elwood oil field, explosions blooming orange against twilight. 20 rounds fired, minimal damage inflicted, but psychological impact immeasurable. Los Angeles descends into panic that night, anti-aircraft guns firing at phantom aircraft, searchlights sweeping empty sky. The submarine attacks represent merely probes, testing responses, measuring reaction times. Japanese naval intelligence collects data from each encounter, how quickly American forces mobilize, which units respond, where gaps exist in coastal surveillance. Off Oregon, the I-25 launches a floatplane that drops incendiary bombs on forest land, attempting to ignite wildfires that would divert resources, create chaos, demonstrate vulnerability. Simultaneously, in the Aleutian Islands, Japanese forces seize Attu and Kiska. American soil falls to foreign occupation for the first time since 1815. The northern garrisons, undermanned and isolated, collapse within hours. Japanese soldiers dig into volcanic rock, constructing fortifications that blend seamlessly with terrain. Supply ships navigate through fog banks, delivering artillery, ammunition, reinforcements. The Aleutians become a dagger pointed at Alaska, and through Alaska, at mainland America. Training intensifies across the Pacific. On islands whose names will become synonymous with carnage, Saipan, Tinian, Guadalcanal, Japanese troops rehearse invasion scenarios. They practice beach assaults at dawn, attacking mock fortifications built to American specifications. Officers drill withdrawal tactics, teaching soldiers how to melt into civilian populations, how to operate behind enemy lines for weeks with minimal resupply. Special naval landing forces, the Rikusentai, perfect their craft. These elite troops combine Marine Corps aggression with samurai discipline. They train in waters matching California's temperature, practice scaling cliffs resembling those at Big Sur, run timed exercises assaulting positions designed to mimic San Francisco's coastal batteries. Every repetition shaves seconds from execution time. Every drill eliminates another variable. Intelligence networks operating inside America send detailed reports. Japanese-American communities face mounting suspicion, internment camps filling with families whose only crime is ancestry. But before the roundups, certain individuals transmitted information, industrial production figures, troop movements, defensive preparations. The intelligence proves fragmentary, often inaccurate, yet each piece contributes to a larger mosaic. Japanese planners understand their window closes rapidly. American industry, once fully mobilized, will produce weapons at rates Japan cannot match. The invasion must occur before that industrial avalanche begins, before Liberty ships fill the Pacific, before bomber production reaches thousands monthly. Speed remains everything. Hesitation equals defeat. Midway changes calculations. In June 1942, 4 Japanese carriers sink beneath the Pacific, taking with them irreplaceable pilots and the Navy's offensive capability. The defeat sends shockwaves through Tokyo. Invasion plans, already ambitious, now border on suicidal. Yet the army continues preparations. To stop would be to admit defeat, to question the emperor's divine will, to betray every sacrifice made since Manchuria. Generals argue behind closed doors. Some advocate consolidation, defending captured territory until America sues for peace. Others insist offense remains the only path, that American morale will crack under sustained pressure, that racial softness will prevent the United States from accepting casualties necessary for Pacific victory. The debates grow heated, personal, laced with accusations of cowardice and treason. Orders continue flowing to forward units. Prepare for invasion operations, maintain readiness, await final authorization. Soldiers load onto transports, check equipment, write letters home they know might never arrive. The machinery of war, once set in motion, develops its own terrible momentum. November 1942. A classified document reaches President Roosevelt's desk. American codebreakers, working in a converted naval building in Washington, have decrypted Japanese military communications revealing Operation Cherry Blossoms at night. The plan's scope takes Roosevelt's breath away. Simultaneous amphibious assaults on San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Paratroop drops targeting inland communication hubs. Submarine-launched aircraft spraying biological agents over populated areas. 15 divisions committed to initial assault, with 20 more in reserve. The decrypts reveal timing, spring 1943, during new moon, when darkness favors attackers and American air patrols face maximum difficulty. Landing zones selected after months of reconnaissance. Supply lines calculated to the last barrel of fuel. Casualty projections listed with bureaucratic coldness. Japanese losses estimated at 40%, acceptable if strategic objectives achieved. What strikes American analysts most is the precision. Japanese planners have identified every radar station along the coast, calculated response times for Army divisions stationed inland, mapped underground utilities in target cities. They know which bridges can support tank traffic, which roads allow rapid deployment, which valleys provide covered approaches to urban centers. General George Marshall convenes emergency meetings. Maps spread across War Department tables show Japanese capabilities overlaid against American defenses. The picture terrifies. Coastal fortifications, impressive on paper, reveal glaring vulnerabilities when examined through the enemy's analytical lens. Reserve forces exist largely on paper, their equipment scattered, their training incomplete. Intelligence officers present intercepted messages showing Japanese confidence. One admiral writes, "American soldiers fight well when defending their homes, but lack the spiritual conditioning necessary for total war. Their society, built on comfort and individualism, cannot sustain the sacrifices required for victory. We shall break them not through superior numbers, but through superior will." The assessment contains uncomfortable truth. American forces in 1942 remain largely untested. Equipment continues arriving from factories, but trained personnel lag behind. Doctrines exist, but battlefield experience doesn't. The draft has swelled the Army's ranks, yet most soldiers have never heard shots fired in anger. Roosevelt orders immediate defensive reinforcements. New divisions deploy to California, Oregon, Washington. Coastal artillery positions receive priority for ammunition, fuel, supplies. Civil defense organizations expand dramatically, training civilians for scenarios previously considered impossible on American soil. Yet resources remain finite. Every division sent to defend the West Coast weakens offensives elsewhere. Every anti-aircraft battery installed in Los Angeles is one less available for England or North Africa. American strategy relies on fighting enemies overseas, carrying war to their territory. Defending the homeland represents a strategic reversal that strains existing plans. Japanese intelligence detects the American buildup. Reconnaissance aircraft photograph new fortifications. Submarines observe increased patrol activity. The window for invasion narrows further. What might have been difficult becomes nearly impossible. Still, the planning continues. Orders remain active, forces stay positioned. March 1943. Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night receives final authorization. Transport ships gather at Truck Lagoon, soldiers boarding in organized waves. Equipment loads follow predetermined sequences, artillery first, then vehicles, then supplies. Every item's position calculated for rapid unloading on hostile beaches. Officers conduct final briefings, maps memorized, objectives restated until every man knows his role perfectly. The invasion fleet numbers over 200 vessels. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers forming protective screens around vulnerable transports. Submarines ranging ahead, clearing approaches, marking channels through American minefields. Support ships carrying fuel, ammunition, medical supplies, everything necessary to sustain operations once ashore. Admiral Yamamoto observes from Yamato, the world's largest battleship. His earlier fears have not diminished. Intelligence reports confirm American defensive strength has tripled since Pearl Harbor. Radar networks now blanket the coast. Fighter squadrons practice interception drills constantly. Army divisions dig into positions overlooking every viable landing beach. The fleet steams eastward, maintaining radio silence, hoping American patrol aircraft miss them in Pacific vastness. Days pass. Tension mounts. Soldiers huddle in transport holds, equipment checked and rechecked, adrenaline fighting seasickness. Officers review plans, contingencies, backup contingencies. Everyone knows the odds, but discipline holds. April 2nd, 1943. American patrol bombers spot the fleet 800 miles west of California. Radar stations confirm massive contacts approaching at steady speed. Alert levels spike to maximum. Coastal populations receive evacuation orders. Highway 101 jams with civilians fleeing inland, scenes of controlled panic unfolding across 3 states. American bombers launch from every available airfield. B-17s, B-24s, even outdated B-18s pressed into service. They climb to altitude, forming massive formations, navigating toward the coordinates transmitted from patrol aircraft. Fighter escorts peel off from coastal defense duties, racing to join the bomber stream. The first American aircraft arrive over the Japanese fleet at dawn. Anti-aircraft fire erupts, black puffs blooming across blue sky. Bombers press their attacks, releasing ordnance from 20,000 feet. Explosions bracket Japanese vessels, near misses sending towering waterspouts skyward. Direct hits score against two transports, their hulls torn open, listing rapidly. Japanese fighters scramble from escort carriers. Zeros climb with terrifying speed, engaging American bombers at altitude. Machine guns hammer, tracers streaking between aircraft. Bombers fall burning into the Pacific. Fighters spin toward the water trailing smoke. The sky becomes a chaos of metal and flame and desperation. Wave after wave of American aircraft arrive. The attacks continue through the day, relentless, grinding down Japanese defenses. More transports sink. A cruiser takes bomb damage, falls out of formation. The invasion fleet's organization begins fragmenting under sustained pressure. Yamamoto faces the brutal calculation: continue toward suicide, or order withdrawal and preserve forces for later use. The decision arrives from Tokyo before he can make it. Emperor Hirohito, briefed on American strength and Japanese losses, orders the fleet to abort. The invasion is cancelled. Transport ships turn westward, survivors limping back toward bases, leaving burning wrecks behind them on the Pacific swells. Operation Cherry Blossoms at night ends before reaching American shores. The invasion fleet, battered and reduced, staggers back to Japanese-controlled waters. Casualty reports filter into Tokyo: 3 transports sunk, 2,000 soldiers drowned, for destroyers damaged beyond repair. The losses, significant but not catastrophic, represent victory by American standards and defeat by Japanese calculations. American coastal defenses remain untested in actual combat, their effectiveness demonstrated through deterrence rather than engagement. The buildup of forces continues, evolving into permanent military installations that will outlast the war. California's coast becomes Fortress America, a barrier no enemy will seriously threaten again. Japanese military leadership fragments further. Army officers blame the Navy for inadequate protection. Naval commanders cite Army's unrealistic timetable and objectives. Behind closed doors, whispered conversations question the wisdom of attacking America at all, doubts that would have meant death if spoken months earlier. The propaganda value of the failed invasion attempt proves immeasurable for American morale. Newsreels show bomber crews describing the battle, reporters interviewing coastal defense commanders, civilians returning to evacuated homes. The narrative becomes one of American strength and Japanese defeat, ignoring how narrowly disaster was avoided, how much luck and code-breaking contributed to victory. For Japanese forces, the cancellation represents their high watermark. Every subsequent operation becomes defensive, reactive, a fighting retreat across the Pacific. Islands they captured with precision and speed become prisons as American forces counterattack with overwhelming material superiority. The training, the discipline, the meticulous planning, all prove insufficient against enemy who can replace every loss threefold. American veterans of the coastal defense will speak decades later about those tense weeks in early 1943. They describe watching the horizon, waiting for invasion forces that intelligence promised were coming. They remember the drills, the alerts, the certainty that combat was imminent. Many never fire shots in anger, yet their presence proves decisive. Wars are won sometimes not through battles fought, but through battles deterred. The story fades from American consciousness quickly. Other campaigns dominate headlines: North Africa, Sicily, the island-hopping advances across the Pacific. The invasion that never happened becomes footnote, interesting but not formative. Only historians and veterans remember how close Japanese boots came to California sand. Yamamoto will die weeks later, his aircraft ambushed after American codebreakers decrypt his itinerary. The man who feared awakening giants gets shot from tropical sky, his prophecy fulfilled in his own death. The precision that defined Japanese military planning continues through the war's remaining years, manifesting in desperate last stands and kamikaze attacks, discipline maintained even as defeat becomes inevitable. The invasion plans gather dust in Tokyo archives, later seized by occupation forces and filed away in Pentagon basements. Researchers occasionally unearth them, marveling at the detail, the ambition, the extraordinary belief that willpower and precision could overcome industrial might. The documents serve as testament to a military culture that perfected the art of war while misunderstanding its fundamental mathematics. Military precision, Japan proved, can take you to the edge of enemy shores, but crossing that final distance requires more than training and discipline and perfectly executed plans. It requires resources Japan never possessed, industrial depth they couldn't match, and perhaps most importantly, strategic wisdom to recognize which battles can't be won regardless of how precisely they're planned. The invasion that military precision prepared for with 100% dedication became the invasion that wisdom should have never attempted at all.